Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire and welcome back to another episode of Look Out and Shout. And today we are reviewing Planet X Kadmos, their version of an IDW inspired Star Saber. Now, this is at least a second run of this figure. I wasn't fortunate enough to pick it up first time round, and I've been looking on secondary markets and been unable to get it, not the right time to get it. I was able to pick this up from, yes, as you guessed it, showzstore.com, and of course you know what to do at this point. If you head on there for any of your purchases, do be so kind to go to the top of the homepage where you can enter support your favourite reviewer code, and you can put in FIRE1, FYRE1, and that enables some points to go onto my account, which I can then use for purchases to do review. You know this by now. I was using some points to get this figure. Thank you very much to those supporting me thus far. And so inside the box he comes with some very nice black polystyrene, and he's got a fair bit of accessories tucked away here and there, but other than that, maybe limited. No gun per se. Whether he always had a gun or not is up for debate. Certainly has a sword. We'll get to that. He also comes with his collector's card, as well as some instructions, which fold out into really a bit of A3. And the instructions are fairly straightforward. It doesn't look too much hard work, but there's also a QR code, which I've yet to try, but I would imagine that takes you to some video instructions. That seems to be the way it goes nowadays with these things. But okay, let's fly into it. And here he is in his robot mode, and that is quite a nice, impressive specimen of a robot. It's very stylized, it's very jagged, and it's very IDW inspired. It's really that spiky, not the G1 blocky look that we kind of know and love, but the IDW style that we have grown to love over the years. Even if you're not a comic fan, when you're looking at some of these designs, you can't help be captivated. And something like Star Saber, very Gundam inspired, early Gundam, late Transformers crossover period, it's a style that really lends to it. So when I was able to get a hold of Kadmos in bot mode, I thought, yeah, that's the style of Star Saber that I want. I love that kind of futuristic flying vibe to him. Yeah, it does not disappoint in bot mode. Maybe you expect him to be a tiniest bit bigger, not an awful lot bigger. It's debatable as to whether this is Chug scale or Masterpiece scale, Chug Plus as I like to refer to it. But it does look good. The blue in particular, straight out of the box, it's a metallic blue. Might not come across on camera, but it does shine. It does sparkle, particularly on the wings and the thighs, and on things like the elbow joints as well. There's a nice little pearlescent look to it. It really does resonate. Let's get in for a closer look. So straight away, if I bring him in closer, you can see there is that kind of presence about him. The jaggedness. The only thing I find is that these wings at the back, which you had to apply out the box, they can get in the way. So if I take them off, you can see a much more naked version, a streamlined version, but it does make posability better. That's probably one thing that you notice with this figure straight away, is that it's very likely to get in its own way. Also some very funny joints. For example, things are tight where you don't expect them to be. There's hard ratchets on the shoulder, which is nice. Good rotation outwards. Again, transformation will be in mindfulness, but you can get some very good rotation at the shoulder joint. You only get a single bend at the elbow, not a double bend, and that's something that this figure is lacking from, is a double bend. The fingers and the wrists are surprisingly stiff. Not too stiff, but they're really firm, like they've been designed to take extra tolerance. The sword that he carries, which I'll show you in a minute with accessories, doesn't weigh an awful lot. But then on top of that, there's a waist tilt, left or right, so he can hold a bit of a pose. But that's very kind of loose. It doesn't take much to knob him. It's not floppy. It's just not a particularly tight friction. And I think it's a bit strange how these would be tighter, the wrists would be tighter, and that would not be so much. The same can be said of the legs. It's not ratcheted at all on the hips, it's just a friction joint, which I think is a bit of a short-sighted move that could wear over time. And then when it comes to bend at the knee, you've got two kinds of bends. And you can do one bend like that, but you can also kind of It's almost like a double knee extension. But again, no ratchets. And the worst tolerance I have found so far is the ankles. In that there is ankle tilt, very big ankle tilt, again, transformation in mind, but it does not hold a pose. He's actually more likely, if you can see, the ankles are more likely to tilt inward on themselves and to hold the weight of the legs on the inside of the feet, that if you hold to flush the connection down, they will get that far, but as soon as you let go, he will eventually tilt back on himself. The weight goes down to the centre and does not maintain itself on the ankle joints. So there's some interesting choice of tolerances here. Other than that, it's all pretty good. There's nice head rotation, good rotation up and somewhat down, and waist rotation as well. So there is a lot to do here. There's poses you can get him in, and he is highly reflective. You will get some joy here. So as you can imagine, accessory-wise, he comes with a fair bit. He comes with one replacement head, which if I get them side by side, and that's probably the best way I can do it, you can see there's very subtle differences. Things like the ears here are a bit more, well, they're white for a start, but they're almost more pointy. The white bits, the spiky bits. There's some slight detail differences on the top of the forehead. The back of the eyes on this one are red, where that one is much more silver. And maybe the thickness of the centre joint on the mouthpiece is bigger on this one than that. I would say this is maybe more cartoon inspired and this is much more comic inspired. I like both of them. I would say differences are very subtle. There's not an awful lot. The only thing I find is that face sculpt, as nice as it is, the silver in the flesh, when there's no light on it, can look a little bit dull. It's a very deep colour. It's not grey like the colours we see at the back or even on the shoulders, but maybe I'd want that to be like the same off-white colour as everything around it, to have that real popping of the face feature, an off-white rather than a metallic silver, because again, when the light's on it, it can look a little bit sunken. Now, interestingly, other things he comes with in this bag, you may not be able to see it, he comes with a replacement faceplate, so we have a choice of maybe 3 to use between 2 heads, and also these white circular fillers, which I would assume go into these gaps on things like the wrists. There's holes, if you like, screw holes, so I'm guessing that's what they are. I've yet to take them out, but now I look at it, there's some gaps elsewhere that looks like these can fit into. So maybe a more complete look can be had of this figure. He also comes with this garish thing, which, as you may have guessed, is his cockpit. It doesn't go on the front, it actually goes to the back of the figure. We'll apply that in a second. But also, he comes with a somewhat typical looking sword, a Star Saber, as I believe, not the Star Saber from Armada. I believe that's his name anyway. Certainly is Star Saber's sword, or sword, and that's nice. I like the hilt, I like the look to it, I like the fact it's got a curved edge, and the chrome is a very nice choice. He holds onto it well, it bites into his wrist nicely. Let's get it in hand and show you what I mean. And there he is, all accessoried up. He's holding his sword and he's got the nose cone on the back. I will say though, that is not plugged in by much and does not take that much for it to come loose. So that's one thing to be mindful of. The sword, on the other hand, actually holds up quite well, but I do wish there was a double elbow. The shoulders do most of the rotation, but it holds well. There's no drooping, again, due to the tightness of the wrist. But yeah, it's a nice sword, good long poses to it. Maybe a lack of outward wrist rotation, so we can't point the sword forward, but it won't droop. I just wish there was a way that you can get a bit of elbow rotation with a double elbow joint. Now this is quite cool, and I wasn't expecting this. If you take away his head and flip out his chest, you actually get Mini Star Saber, and that's cool. He's pretty much a Battle Master, Target Master, Micro Master, Brain Master, whatever you want to call it, but he transforms from the chest of Star Saber and comes out much like the old toy did. I did not think this was going to be a feature with this. I'd never really considered it, but I think that's really cool. I really like how it transforms. It's not complicated and it's good size as well. It's probably about right to this stature, so yeah, that's a cool little feature. And just so we have him here, here's how you see he scales with other smaller bots, really from a typical Headmaster, a Target Master, a standard cassette tape and a bigger cassette tape. So this is kind of how he's scaling in a more mini bot style of things. And while we have him here, this is what you can actually do as well with little Star Saber, is turn him into his very mini fighter jet. And yeah, that is pretty small, and a bit of an awkward transformation getting a robot to crumple up into that. But once you're there, it's okay. It's a funny use of it, but there it is. And interestingly, he's pretty much on par with a Masterpiece cassette. This is from the Masterpiece Soundwave one. This is Laserbeak. And yeah, there's really not much in that at all. You just really want to make sure that it all lines back up again for the shoulders down. The centerpiece will more or less look after itself. And you want to plug these two circular bits. And he's back as he was. Okay, and on to comparisons now, and this could be a little bit difficult with that wingspan. Here he is with MMC's Optus Pexus, their version of Orion Pax. That's a nice scaling together, seeing these two side by side. Two different companies, of course. Again with MMC, here is Couture, their version of Tarn. Again, two different companies, but I like how these two scale. MMC's Colossus, or Colossus. This is their version of IDW Thunderclash. Love that bot, such a colourful looking bot. Generation Toy Tyrant. Now this is something that does surprise me. I thought he would actually be smaller, but Star Saber is slightly taller when you look at the shoulders, the top of the shoulders. That's probably about right though. I would say there's not a lot between Star Saber and Megatron. So this is Generation Toy, different company, still going for that IDW style. That's actually quite a good scale range, I quite like that. And a true Masterpiece scale Fans Toys Quietus with the IDW sculpture on. And really the nemesis from one to the other for those clued up on the series. Really love these two side by side. The two swordsmen either side of the fence, both believing in their martial arts skill. That's really cool, seeing these two together. They pop so well. Okay, let's get him transformed up, shall we? And here he is in his jet mode. And whilst that looks good, and transformation wasn't particularly difficult, it's one of these things that looks really good until you pick it up. Unless I'm doing something wrong with the transformation, I can't get everything to tab in, and it's not that it springs back, it just won't bite and hold due to maybe the weight. You can see around the back here, these are supposed to go flush into the legs, and as soon as you put it down or pick it up, it comes loose. I will say that's probably a feature on most jet transformers. There seems to be this case of you can't get everything to bite in, you can't get legs to tuck in and arms to tuck in and wings to come out without something giving way. It doesn't all want to hinge together. And whilst this might be the most aerodynamic looking Star Saber out there, which you can't really say that for many others, and the mode looks okay, it's a shame when it's a little bit of a crumbly mess. But I like the look of the mode. Again, the blue is shining through nicely, but you'll see what I mean when I pick it up. Let's get in for a closer look. So he sits pretty well. He sits on the landing gear nicely, but you see if I pick it up here, well, look there, straight away. The engines are coming away from the weight of the legs because there's not biting into it. It's the rotation on this centerpiece that flips around from robot mode, go 180 degrees and plugs into the legs and does not bite. It's supposed to peg into the side here, but even if you look on the side of the designs of the box, these pegs aren't fully flush. There's nothing to hold the weight of the weighty arms as well as the weighty legs. And this comes back to what I said when it was in bot mode. Some parts of this figure are very tight and some not so much, and the bit that needs to hold the weights needs to be tighter. This rotating hinge needs to be stronger or has another clasping mechanism down the middle, because it's only asking for these two plastic engines to sit on die-cast made legs and they won't bite into their pegs for long enough to take the weight, as you can see. So, bit of a shame. I'll try and pick them up and show you parts of it anyway. If I hold it in place, it creates the illusion. So yeah, landing gear, which does come down nicely. Now I will say this, if I put the landing gear away, this is where his Micromaster, Power Master, whatever you want to call it, lives in here. Now if you take that out and want to have him side by side for jet mode, you can't, because that keeps the nose cone pegged into these, which are the feet of that small robot, and you take that out, this just hasn't got anything to bite onto and just flings upwards, so you can't have the two separate. I think that's a little bit of a shame that you couldn't have two jets in unison, if you like, whether that's keeping in tune to the cartoon or toy, I don't know, but that's how he looks. He looks nice enough. In terms of an aesthetic point of view, you have rear wheels, which not all jets have nowadays. And yeah, very aerodynamic, very cool, but not structurally very sound. Now again, weapon storage I think is a bit of an issue here. This is his sword. Now, I don't know really where you can put it. I would hope or think it could sit in the middle somewhere, but I can't find it. The only place I can think to put it is what you can have on arm mode and bot mode, which is kind of that, which again feels like a bit of a miss to me. That seems, I mean, again, unless I'm missing something, unless it goes somewhere on the underside that it can plug into, I can't see anything totally obvious. Now for comparison, here's what we're looking at. Here he is alongside Legacy Commander class Skylinks. Here he is alongside Masterpiece Scale Deformation Space Starscream. No, I haven't worked up the courage to transform that back yet. Armada Starscream. And Make Toys Blindfire, their version of a Strafe. It's because it's the only other jet I had lying around. So what are my final thoughts on Kadmos? It's probably its biggest selling point is the bot mode. Its presence in its jagged design makes it really eye-catching. It's got some lovely paint applied to it and individual carvings on the shoulders, to the wingspan, to even the head sculpt, which isn't my favourite, still looks good. And yeah, it's got a lot of presence to it. It's got a lot of nice design qualities that really comes straight from the comic book design, of course, but adapted into figure form, into toy form. It's got very good weight to it, very good heft, most of it in the legs, fair bit of die cast here. You do feel like you're getting fair representation for your money. That's possibly, whilst they're good points, and the jet mode is okay. It's actually probably the best jet mode that we've seen of Star Saber, because he's never really looked like the most jettiest jet you've ever found. But that's possibly where the positives end. And it's not to say there's more negatives than positives, but there's possibly more negatives than I would have thought. The tolerances on joints seems unusual to me. I mean, look at this. You've got a rotation at the hip, left or right. So, okay, that might be good, but it doesn't hold a pose very well. It's very easy to turn it left or right. So if you try to balance him on one leg, for example, and wanted him to lean inwards, if you wanted to go that kind of pose and then bear weight, you see he just topples. So there's no particular friction there. By the time you have a topple one side, the chest piece can also go a bit left to right, and the back piece can also rotate as well. Well, he's a bit of a drunken mess. So he can take a lot of resetting, which some figures can do. But couple that with a very weak ankle tilt, it's not fit for purpose. I like the fact that there is one, but it seems to be more for transformation than for holding a pose. It doesn't hold the weight of the legs. But then again, like I said earlier, the tolerance is very strong wrists, which fine, there's no weapon droopage, but it doesn't really need to be. No double elbows, and they are collapsible, so there would have been room, you would have thought. I like the mini Micromaster, Chessmaster. There's good points to this figure, but there's bad points as well. One thing that never used to bother me was weapon storage. I never particularly cared. Honestly, I still don't, but it does surprise me. Whilst you can hold the sword, or sword, in his hand, or even peg it to the side of his arm, and you can do that, as a bit of side storage, why couldn't you have a similar feature for jet mode, for alt mode? Unless I'm missing something. I had a look, and I can't see many places that sword can go, again, unless I'm missing something. And he doesn't come with a gun. I'm happy to admit I'm not too au fait with this era of Transformers, whether he always had a gun or not, but that surprises me a little bit. It possibly is worth the price, bearing in mind you will pay a little bit more for third party. It's just a few things I wish were sharpened up on, and Planet X do a better job than this, but they have also been known for a few misses on their products. I just think this is this product's miss. Now, I can't really tell you, is this a definitive Star Saber that you want in your collection between the HasLab Project 1, which you could obviously put into with Victory Saber, and you could also go down the model kit route as well as the Masterpiece route. This is very much a particular type of Star Saber. I really liked it because I'm a fan of the comics and I like its design, and it's sitting there on my IDW shelf, and particularly alongside Cyclonus in samurai gear, it goes really, really well. But I'm not going to say it's the best one in my IDW shelf. It's not the best one of that collection. However good it looks, it does have its flaws. It's a shame to say. But I like it. I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I got it for a fair price and didn't pay any more than what I did. but at the same time I wish it was a little better for a figure that's fairly well sought after because of its design. But based on this, I give this figure 3 Rodimus Star badges. It might feel a little bit low because it is a bit of a beloved figure and a beloved design. Again, I'm glad I've got it. I just wish some of the engineering was a little bit sharper, a little bit on point, that if you wanted to get it into poses, it's probably going to give you more of a headache to do so. And it's a shame because it looks so good, it's crying out for photographs to be taken. But there we go, that is my review of Planet X Kadmos. I'll stick some photos up at the end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and hit that subscribe button because I will see you on the next one.